Hello everyone and welcome to Thermal Control Magazine's interactive session on ventilation and air handling technologies. In the ongoing scenario of gradual unlocking during the receding pandemic, the prime concerns of health and safety is increasing demand of ventilation equipment at residential, commercial, industrial locations, hospital and clinics which have huge energy consumption. It is also necessary to innovate and deploy the technology in the meeting the emerging need to cope up with the better indoor-outdoor air exchange. Air quality indoor is 2 to 5 times more polluted than the air quality outdoors. One factor is relative humidity and other concerns with how to clean the air that determines outdoor air climate. For an effective air exchange, ventilation in building provides healthy air for breathing by diluting, filtering, and removing the pollutants from it. Indoor air quality is maintained to ensure proper infection control and patient safety. The global ventilation system market size is projected to reach $33 billion by 2027. The IoT devices market also contributes to the ventilation system market. To remove stuffy air from indoors, the increasing demand for fans from the commercial sector such as office spaces, hospitality as well as increasing data center space is also resulting in growth of ventilation segment. On this note, today we have come together to witness an engaging session on ventilation and air handling technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and privilege for me to introduce you to today's distinguished panel, Mr. Vishal Kapoor, Managing Director, Meho HCP Air Systems Private Limited, Mr. Vaibhav Goel, Head of Projects, Chief Operating Officer, Breathe Easy Consultants, Mr. Yash Shukla, Executive Director at Center for Advanced Research in Building, Science and Energy, and Mr. Gaurav Vasudev, Managing Director at GAPS Engineering. So delegates, let's get ready for an interactive and engaging session on ventilation and air handling technologies.
Mr. Vishal Kapoor, for effective air exchange, ventilation in built environment provides healthy air to breathe. Currently, infrastructure activities and data center spaces increasing. So what are your views about AC solutions and strategies to ensure infection control, healthier environment with sustainability in changing scenario of pandemic? Mr. Vishal.
Thank you, Mr. Gopal. Before I start to attempt to answer this question, I think one thing which is very important for each one to understand that HVAC or HVAC-based interventional technologies is the second resort of limiting infection spread inside any space. The first always will have to be based on control, thermal screening, vaccination, hygiene, social distancing, etc. It cannot and never should be taken as a replacement of those basic levels because whatever you might do with your HVAC system, with your ventilation and filtration, if you're not following the other norms, there is a limit to what these technologies can achieve. Now, coming to a specific question as to what technologies are there and how can we ensure the right air changes or methods to control infection control, it's actually fairly simple. The COVID guideline document that we had brought out of this year last year, and we are right on the midst of having the second version coming out. We talk of very simple levels. One is ensuring the right thermal conditions inside the space for temperature and humidity. Means you can still go beyond 24 degrees. You do not have to be 21 and 22 and shivering to be comfortable. You can be comfortable at 26, 27 degrees. Ensure your humidity levels are very well maintained. That means you should be in that range of 60, 65, 70%. Do not try and go below that because that becomes a problem. And the most important thing is ensure the correct amount of outdoor air ventilation. I will not cover data centers over here because data centers become a total different application altogether. Data centers are more about equipment and less about people. But yes, call centers or BPOs or KTOs, etc., occupancy levels are going to start going up. At this point, over the last year and a half, the occupancy levels have been low with work from home, etc. But slowly they will start coming back. We need to ensure that whatever is the design occupancy levels, our ventilation rates are kept matched with that. There is this new term that is now coming into being in our industry, which is called equivalent air changes. That means air changes is not just about bringing in outdoor air ventilation to achieve 1 or 2 air changes. We can achieve up to 4 air changes, 5 air changes with a combination of outdoor air bringing into the space and the right level of air cleaning that's happening inside. Air cleaning, at times people say that how can I add an advanced or a higher grade filter like a MERV 13 or a MERV 14 in my existing system, because my existing system will not be able to take the pressure drop. Yes, possibly. If a system cannot take the additional pressure drop, what we recommend is at least try and take it to a MERV 8 filter. A lot of these units unfortunately have very bad levels of filtration. Go and take filters from the right company, the right manufacturer who can give you the test certificates. Reach at least a MERV 8. Then try and do possibly some localized air cleaning. That localized air cleaning can be a combination of UVGI, in-duct UVGI. Again, UVGI is a subject which you need to understand. UVGI is not blue light. Okay, a lot of people think I just have UVGI inside my coil and that's taking care of infection control. No, it is not. If you want to do in-air treatment of infection or of any of these viruses and bacteria, then the way of selecting UVGI, the way of installing UVGI is very different, and it needs to be installed mostly in duct. You can do that and a mix of localized air cooling and ensure that outdoor air ventilation needs to come into the space at all times, even going beyond the occupied timelines. We recommend that if the office closes at whatever time, ensure that your ventilation, both air coming in as well as air going out, the extract systems are working of hours beyond occupied times, and at least to ensure that you are ventilated the space. Because today or till last year, mostly ventilation was being talked from a CO2 control perspective. Today we are talking of CO2 also from ventilation, also from a infection control perspective, which is much more risky for health than possibly increased levels of CO2. So these are the basic levels, and it's not difficult to implement. Whether it's a new design, whether it's a retrofit, there are technologies, there are engineering solutions, there are engineers who can tell you what you can and how to manage it in an existing or a new system.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Vishal. No, that was very informative and fits well in the present scenario, as cleaning air is an ongoing concern for all. Now, Dr. Yash Shukla, taking cognizance of increasing construction activities and pandemic at inflection point as well as research studies, while talking about building environments, how natural ventilation and air movement can sustain healthy air exchange beyond pandemic in future, and what market potential do you observe for air handling equipment and designs to provide natural comfort at residential and industrial locations, including hospitals, in a big way? Dr. Yash.
Thank you. That's a very, very interesting question. So thank you for raising that. I think as we look at the way our grid requirements are increasing, the need of comfort systems are increasing, it is essential for us to utilize outdoor air whenever it's comfortable. Of course, we have to have a way of filtering the data. So now filtering the air before it comes in, especially when the outdoor air quality is bad. You can use a mechanical ventilation and use filtration along with it, or you can use a natural ventilation, and there are some ways of even providing a filtering solution with natural ventilation so that the particulate level of incoming air reduces. So I think it's essential in the context of India, where we are seeing exponential increase in energy use and expecting even 5 to 7 times more increase by 2050, that we use natural ventilation as an integral part of our design. Now, in terms of the technology and potential, I think historically we have always used this as a technology, as a solution. So as a culture, we have imbibed it. Now, I'll give you an example. Very simple example is when my parents or grandparents were sleeping at night, and when outside is comfortable, they will turn off the AC and they will wake up and open the windows. Now, when I see my kids in the night, once they start the air conditioning systems, no matter how good the conditions are outside, they will not wake up till the morning and open the windows. It's a cultural change. It's a habit change. It's an occupancy change. So what behavior change is what we need to integrate, and we need to adapt to these change in expectation by having a more sophisticated way of controlling the air. So we can have a sensor that will automatically open the windows while maintaining the conditions. We can incorporate a way that the air conditioning systems can work with the envelope systems, such as the air ventilation components, so that it becomes easier for integration. I do see there a technology exists right now, but there is a need for an integrator who would look at air handling unit not as a technology, but as a complete solution. So that's a short answer. I can go on for half an hour, but I'd like to restrict myself to that answer.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Yash. That's encouraging insight for the comfortability and living. And why you are using an integrator, this is a new area which will be. Mr. Vaibhav Goyal, during gradual unlock, human wellness is a concern for living beings, hospitals or hospitality. And managing indoor quality is a universal necessity during pandemic. Do you think existing IOQ technologies and ventilation standards are improving built environment for healthy air exchange? And what are the next steps for moving forward? Mr. Vaibhav.
I would say very detailed question and detailed answer has to be given, but I'll myself to the time limitation. And the technologies on IAQ, I would say these are, in Indian context, I would say, again, these are in very nascent stages. And people adoption is not very clear. What needs to be adopted at the people's level, the occupants level, it is not very clearly defined. Maybe because of the lack of knowledge at the administrator side, maybe because of lack of knowledge at the occupant side, or maybe lack of vision in terms of how I am going to vision my company, my employees, that I should have low absenteeism, low medical problems, low signs of diseases in my employees. Does it make sense to me or not? That becomes a very, very healthy and important topic today. And that will drive the technologies towards the finer stages. And if I talk about the technologies in front of us, starting from very simple adoptions, maybe having the combination of filter, maybe a grade G4, that is MERV 8, and the UV at the coils, we can have a good result in terms of filtration levels. If we are able to do that without changing the motor capacity and the fan capacity, I should do that immediately so that I am having a first level of protection in my office. And when I'm talking about the more sophisticated levels of controls, more sophisticated levels of filtration, there are plenty of technologies, but I want to reiterate one thing more very clearly, that people should adopt technologies and they should look for proven technologies, and they should look at the technology which is not producing any byproduct which is harmful in nature. Because we are here addressing the larger problem of air pollution, the larger problem of the diseases, the larger problem of indoor environment. If we are adding small amount of harmful, any kind of pollutant, then I'm adding a problem to the existing problem. I am not going to have a solution. And the perfect solution will come when you are actually lessening the burden on the earth, as well as creating the healthy spaces. So the nascent stage has started, the adoption has started in India. Most of the new buildings have started adopting the technologies on IAQ, and they are listening to the designers and engineers like us. And people are now asking for more and more betterment in their offices and the spaces. When it comes to hospitals and hotels and hospitality sector, still, I would say we should wait for some more time for hospitals to recover from COVID to the post-COVID and the post-COVID scenario, because their economic scenarios have changed and their adoption levels have changed if I compare it to the situation of 2019. So they will also address these things, and they will also make their occupants happy and their guests happy in coming years. But when it comes to hospitals, it is very important to understand from the point of knowledge and from the point of technologies available, which needs to be adopted today. And if they have not adopted, then we are going to have more and more disastrous situation in front of us if we have COVID in long run. So we have to, we need to make our hospitals to be capable of having the control on aerosol transmission, especially in the ICUs and the isolation wards, or in the critical areas like emergency wards or the patient waiting rooms, all such kind of rooms where gatherings are happening. So this is my submission. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vaibhav. Looking at the future beyond pandemic is a well-deserved necessity with new technologies to deal with. Mr. Gaurav Vasudev, for optimizing IOQ, what probable suggestions like retrofit, etc. could be advocated for safety and health concerns of occupants in workspaces environment in terms of HVAC quality solutions to combat worsening situations in future too, as pandemic virus with multiplying variants is not willing to leave us all? Mr. Gaurav.
Thank you. So it's a very interesting question. All my fellow panelists has given their inputs what need to be done on that. I can try and add something which we can put it on a retrofit applications, because for me the retrofit is going to be the more challenging than the new projects or new technologies which we are going to implement. On retrofit conditions, when we have to dilute to make let's say a natural ventilation, or we have to add a lot of fresh air and we don't have a space within our air handling unit room, we need to add a smaller another fresher unit which is again having a thermal break onto the air handling unit system with the best possible filtration class, which can be marked 14 in that case, so that we are not adding more pollutant as my fellow panelist has already said, that if we are adding something to the system which is going to create more problems, we are not solving the problem, we are adding more challenges to those problems. So we don't want to bring fresh air inside without treating it properly, so that we are not adding more problems to it. That is number one, which can be looked at. Second thing, which Mr. Vishal has already pointed out, when we are using UVGI system, it need to be used in the return ducting, not on the coils. Coils, the UVGI system which works on the coil, it is only taking care of microbes and bacteria, but they do not work on virus control. So we really need to choose a proper, proven, certified UVGI supplier who can give a better intensity for if I go into a little more detail on virus control, we need about 3000 microwatt per centimeter square per second to disinfect the coronavirus, as per all medical agencies, which has been and which has been already writing the articles on UVGI system application. So we need to be very, very careful when we are designing UVGI system, then it has to be one pass clearance. So once pass clearance means the air which is coming from the environment, from a return in the return ducting, it should be moving through the UVGI system once, and it has been deactivating all viruses which has been added from the indoor air quality. So these are the main 2 or 3 parameters we need to look at. We do not have to overdo the things. We all don't have to rush towards H13 or H14 filters in our commercial spaces. That is not required at all. By doing it, we are going to kill our existing system. And Dr. Shukla have already mentioned that we have already going over grid requirements on air conditioning. So we need to add a lot into our design while working on the retrofit. Whereas the new projects still have a breathing space, and it have kind of new technology which can be easily settle in if we look into design more appropriately while doing it. And also I agree with Dr. Shukla that we are looking for kind of person who is an integrator. It's not just a supplier or a designer. We need to look into an integration where the person who's going to install understand what kind of technology need to be installed for that particular kind of a building. I hope I answered it.
Yes,
I
Gaurav sir,
Yes.
Anand,
Yeah.
just want to add to what Gaurav said,
Yeah.
that we need to ensure and we understand that no one technology or no one solution is a replacement of the other. It's not that you can install UVGI and you'll forget filters. No, filter does its own job, ventilation does its own job. UVGI, if you require to put, does its own job. It's not that if I put UVGI, I can do with a bad filter. No, it does not replace each other. They can complement each other, but they cannot replace each other. Number one. Number two, when Gaurav talked about it, not necessary for MERV 13, it depends on the system. It depends if the system can handle it or not handle it. But again, for people who are doing retrofit, you can pick up filters from multiple manufacturers. People who are just fly-by-night operators or people who are established, technologically advanced filter manufacturers, and you'll be surprised to see the pressure drop changes between same level of filters from a manufacturer to manufacturer. So when you're buying your filter, please don't take a chance. It's like when you're buying a water filter, you or your family will go through all kinds of analysis of water filters and then end up buying the filter. But for an air filter, we've seen a facility operator just looks at the price. Oh, this is the cheapest, let me buy that. Please don't make that mistake. Look at buying the right filter, however expensive it might be. You will recover the cost in no time because the pressure drop across a good filter will be far less, and you will be able to afford to go to a high level filtration just by saving and going in for the right amount of level of filtration. So look at what a system can handle and then try and go for that.
Sir, thank you so much for the addition to what Mr. Gaurav Vasudev said. And Gaurav sir, definitely this COVID-19 situation again reinstated or brought this conversation of indoor air quality for public spaces as well as private spaces. It becomes so relevant at this point of time. Thank you so much for your observations. Okay, so we are moving towards the closing of our session. So we would like to hear a closing remark from each one of you. So I would like to start with Mr. Vishal Kapoor. Sir, can you start with a closing remark for this session?
Yeah, so I think in my presentation, I had a summary slide, which actually was like my closing remarks, that you cannot mistake and not have outdoor ventilation, including in your home, in your bedroom, this room you sleep in for 8 to 9 hours. A lot of us do not have any outdoor ventilation. We just put the AC on, and then we at times get up feeling a little heavy in the head despite a 6 or 7 hour sleep. So whether it's a home or it's an office, ensure that the outdoor air is flowing into your room and flowing out. It will not flow in if it does not have a path out. Ensure the right kind of filter and rightly maintain the filter. Ensure your filters and coils are always kept clean. Again, wherever you are sitting in over there. And as I had said, that please do not understand HVAC interventional technologies. This airborne virus, yes, it is airborne. Yes, this virus is dangerous, but let's not misinterpret it airborne to be air conditioned controlled or air conditioned spread. There are two different aspects to it. You have to first control who and how many enter, how they behave, how they use the space. Only then will any other aspects have a control. And finally, monitor. You heard Vaibhav talk about monitoring. It is very important. There are countries in the world who have started making, for example, CO2 monitoring mandatory in public spaces. You cannot open your restaurant if you are not monitoring and displaying to your walk-in guests the CO2 level inside a space. We look forward to that day in our country because that will ensure that the public space owner or operator will have to bring in the right level of ventilation, which is not only required in COVID times. All these things that we talked about is not only for COVID. This is requirement all through for your health, for your productivity. Please remember, we always say a building is about people. A building is not about the civil structure. A building is about people, their comfort, productivity, health and safety is of prime importance. After that, you can look at all other aspects that you wish to look at. But first address these 4 points. Once you are consciously doing that, whether you're a designer or an owner or an operator, you will mostly have no problems around the air quality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kapoor. Mr. Goyal?
I just want to say that air is invisible. So be very careful while choosing anything. Air is invisible around you and you have to be very, very cautious and productive in choosing anything. Remember one thing, healthy lifestyle is important, but make sure that from now onwards you move towards airy lifestyle also. That becomes important for all of us as we have understood that how much ventilation is important in our lives. Airy lifestyle. So healthy lifestyle plus airy lifestyle is the mantra from today's presentations. And last but not the least, monitoring. Energy meters are important. I am not against them, and I am in favor of energy monitors, energy meters everywhere. Even the sub meters are very, very important. But air quality monitors are as important as they are. And that's because we care about you, we care about our health, and we need to care about our health more importantly after the COVID hit. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Prasad.
Thank you, Mr. Goyal. Dr. Shukla?
Thank you. I just building on what Vishal and Vaibhav said, 3 key points. Ventilation is essential. It's not important. It's essential and vital. You have different second point. You can get different ways of ventilation. You have to choose what's most optimum and what leads to a most comfortable and healthy conditions. And final third point is make sure that all the systems work in sync. You cannot have just rely on either natural ventilation, mechanical ventilation, so they work in sync for you to deliver the final product. It's like if one machine goes off or damaged, you will not get the end product. So just make sure that all components fit together well.
Thank you, Dr. Shukla. Yes, Mr. Vasudev.
All right, so I'll just add 2 lines. We breathe what is next to our nose. So there is no choice. We can choose anything else. So you have to be very, very sure what you're breathing has to be inappropriate. Second thing which Vishal has very, very clearly mentioned, there is one product which is not a replacement of others. All in series works best. We cannot choose one and throw away another. It has to be a couple of things in place to have a better air quality. 2, overdoing is not necessity. We should look at what my system can handle and provide the best at that point.
Thank you, panelists, for exchanging your valuable thoughts on today's topic, ventilation and air handling technologies. We hope you enjoyed the session thoroughly. Before wrapping up today's session, we would like to thank our distinguished panelists, Mr. Vishal Kapoor, Mr. Vaibhav Goyal, Mr. Yash Shukla, and Mr. Gaurav Vasudev. I'd also like to thank Mr. Gopal Krishna and Mr. Prasad Nair for taking up this initiative. So with this, we would like to announce the closing of today's session. I request you to stay tuned for more such sessions. Until then, thank you and goodbye.